Hello and welcome to the Specialist Report. I hope everyone's doing all right out there tonight. We have got a good show tonight. We've got a great guest tonight. First, let me introduce my co-host, Jimmy Barr. Thanks for joining me tonight. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, and I'm honored to be here with one of my top two favorite podcast people on the planet. It's a pleasure to be here. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you for thanking me.
But I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Well, thank you, because tonight we're starting a new show. It's the Specialist Report. We're going to have all sorts of people from different kind of skills, different kind of I can't even think of the word now.
Backgrounds.
Backgrounds. That's the word. To explore a little more about the world we live in, how we react, how we work, how our minds work. And the forests, archaeology. I mean, lots of things. We're going to get into it all. Tonight, we're going to cover kind of PTSD, which many people suffer from with Bigfoot, with these encounters. And we've got a great, fantastic, interesting guest tonight. We've been talking backstage quite a bit. It's Barbara Charlton. Welcome, Barbara.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I've been looking forward to this.
You're very welcome. You are a certified EFT practitioner, and that stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, which
Correct.
I know a little bit about, not a lot. I hope you're going to tell us lots about it tonight. But let's start with how you got into therapy, I guess.
So that's the thing, is that thanks for bringing that up, because I am an EFT practitioner, but I'm not a licensed anything. I'm not a healthcare practitioner. In fact, a lot of clients work with therapists or counselors or whatever. And EFT was created by a psychologist back in the early 90s, I want to say, to make his therapy go more quickly. So I got into it. I had been getting emails forever, probably because of a number of, things I've signed up for. And I always thought it looked kind of strange, because what are these people doing, tapping on their face? Like, seriously? And about a year after my mom died, I saw one come through for the annual EFT Tapping World Summit from Nick Ortner and his group. And I thought, I should explore this. And I looked into it because I'm open to all sorts of alternative things. I've studied and read alternative everything since I was a kid. I don't really trust mainstream almost anything unless I check them out more closely. And I started doing the self-work, because the best part about EFT is it is a self-help tool. And I always encourage my clients, do as much as you can on your own. And when you run into a roadblock, or you just can't seem to get this shift that you need, then we can work on it together. So I got to working on it, did the summit, and then I tested it. And I had a dog that I had lost, and still 15 years later, it would still break my heart to think about him, right? I didn't lose him in some tragic way. He died healthy as possible in an old age. And I tapped on Bo, and I found out that it worked. I could talk about Bo now without tearing up, without maybe having to leave the room. I never wanted another German Shepherd until I got that all cleared, as we say, or neutralized. So I started to look at it more seriously. And that's when I got into formalized training with EFT Universe. And you may have seen Dawson Church. He took over for Gary Craig when Gary retired, and Gary's retired twice because he was his publisher. And I pursued it from there. I wanted to do it in a way that I did it the right way. I wanted to know clinical EFT and bring the changes that we would only read about, and I saw that they actually worked.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I guess your experience losing your dog is a shock, a traumatic experience. I mean, we don't often realize how what might seem little to somebody else can feel like the end of the world, totally heartbreaking. Be it anything, any pet or situation. And we carry it around a lot with us, don't we? But we don't always know as well.
We don't realize how deeply they're in there, or people say it's just a dog. Like, I will come across the table almost, which I don't have to now, but it's not just a dog. If you're an animal person and if they're more than property to you, they're part of the family. And even if you don't get it, I just encourage people at least be sensitive and aware that that's a family member to someone that they lost. I don't think people understand if they don't have that.
Yeah, there's an emotional connection, a physical connection, an emotional connection, mental connection with them, and it's for some people, a loss of a pet is the same, if not greater, than the loss of a family member.
It can be, because that love is unconditional.
Yeah.
Not only that, they're with you all the time. You know, they're not like an ant that you see now and again, maybe. I mean, and I'm not trying to put any of your ants down. They're just important. But there's that thing as well where you've got something with you all the time. It's a you know, a lot to get used to, you know, for most people who've got one anyway. So how do you get connected to Bigfoot?
So this is funny. So I was doing a shamanic journey seminar with our local crystal shop. It was a great job. Michael Running Bear is a shaman here in the Dallas area, and he led us through 2 meditations. And we were to find our spirit animal. So I'm doing the meditation, I'm following the visualization, and they say, now you come around the corner of the stream and out on a little beach there at the edge of the stream, there's your spirit animal. And it was Bigfoot. And I was like, I've never heard of that being a spirit animal, right? And so we talked and we had some really interesting conversation. And I thought, okay, am I making this up, right? You always think you're making this stuff up. And then they did the second visualization and he came through again. So I'm telling, I don't know if you know Shell Keoki Dion, Jimmy, Danielle and I were talking about her. She's been researching for years, but more from the aspect of when she was a kid, she would play with them and didn't know it, right? And then she has the telepathic connection. Their message was to her, bring back to humanity that we're a people, right? That we're not these monsters. We probably look like them, and we get that. But so I'm talking to Shell because I'm trying to find people that sounded authentic to connect me to people who had these experiences and are carrying around PTSD or trauma, whatever from it. Because you listen over and over, people who have encountered Dogman or any cryptid that terrifies them, right? They are, they're dismissed. They're considered crazy. You go to your therapist. One guy up in Canada said he told his therapist and she laughed at him. So I'm asking Shell, who are maybe some podcast hosts I can speak with talking on the front lines? And I'm telling her about my experience. And the first thing she says is, well, I don't know what you think about a spirit animal, but they're not an animal. And I said, hey, he crashed my shamanic journey. I did not label him anything. And she still thought I was kind of full of beans. So I was telling her that one of the questions I asked him is, I hear reports all the time about Bigfoot being seen with small alien beings or carrying an orb. What's the deal with the orb, right? I don't know the guy, but I figure I have one shot at it, so I'm going to ask. And he said, that is a portable portal if we need to go quickly in whatever area that we're in. Maybe we're in an unfamiliar area. So I mentioned that to Shell in passing, and she said, you really did have this experience. Uh-huh. And I know, I mean, because look, you talk to people all the time. People make stuff up. I don't know how many people would do this purely for attention getting, because the kind of attention that you get with this isn't necessarily always positive as an experiencer. Right. So she introduced me to Brent Thomas of Paranormal Portal. He had Carrie on. I heard Carrie tell his story, and I had already hooked up with Brent saying, send me the people that need this kind of help because they're not taken seriously. And so all the way around, that's how I connected with Bigfoot, and then followed up with the Psychic Sasquatch Spiritual Retreat, where I didn't talk to me at all. So yeah, it's an interesting path, and he hasn't continued to keep in contact with me. And maybe the whole point of it was so that I could reach out to people who are underserved, you know.
Could have been leading you here.
Right. And yeah, and it's led me to all kinds of different kind of paranormal things, because I don't judge. I just listen. I can hear if there's trauma, or if someone's making it up, or if they need to go back to see someone else. I mean, I'm okay with saying that too.
Yeah.
I think go ahead, Jenny, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Go.
I was just going to say, I think I have heard of Shell, and I believe I maybe even have spoken with her. If I'm remembering correctly, she seemed to have quite a bit of knowledge about Dogman.
She does.
And not only Dogman, but others that are like Dogman. I think she called dog creatures.
Wolf creature.
Yes.
She wants people to differentiate that just because they look like canines, they're not the same.
Yes, they're not the same. One's more mean and one's more of a protector type thing. I remember having a conversation with her about it now. I sent her some pictures and she told me exactly what I was dealing with.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
And boy, if don't ask her if you don't want to know, because she will tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Right.
Which is good. People need that.
Yeah, straightforward.
Before we get into some of, I know you've dealt with all sorts of things. Near-death experience, other traumas like this people have experienced. What are the other tools that you use, or that go hand in hand? Can you just do things with tapping alone, or is it good to have other tools as well?
I like to have other tools, and I like to assemble a team so that I know I'm not the only answer, and just because I have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So I've studied emotion code, and then the advanced version, which I think of as advanced, is body code by Dr. Bradley Nelson. And I like those because those use kinesiology and muscle testing. So I can be talking with you, you give me permission, we get connected essentially. And my favorite muscle testing is if it's a positive answer, I can't push my finger down with my little finger here. And if it's false, it goes down like a light switch. When someone can't pinpoint where it's coming from, or we need to sort of back into it, that's my favorite way of going at it. And then that uses magnets going over the, I don't know if you know anything about traditional Chinese medicine and the meridians and whatnot, but there's one meridian called the governing meridian that pretty much everything else integrates with. And you take a magnet, once you've identified it and people have it up in their awareness, and you pass a magnet over your head a certain amount of times, depending on what it is. So that one's really helpful. And we'll flip in and out of these. In fact, some clients will call me up and go, I need a body code session. Okay, that's what we'll do. Another thing that I am learning, and I cannot wait for the restrictions with COVID and whatnot to become more relaxed, is matrix re-imprinting. That's by a gentleman there in the UK named Carl Dawson, one of the 29 advanced EFT practitioners or master trainers in the world. He discovered it a little accidentally, where a woman in one of his classes, while they were tapping, she visualized herself at the age she was at when the event happened. And what she was doing was, while she was tapping on herself and he was leading them through it, she was tapping on her 6-year-old self, or whatever that was. I'm here from the future. I am you all grown up. I'm here to help you get through this. And effectively, when you're going into any of these traumas, and I'm saying little t trauma, not big T trauma. There's a whole specialty in EFT for, big T PTSD. You open up this trauma capsule, you bring it up, and the brain doesn't know. Are you experiencing this for the first time, or are you retelling the experience? Which is why when you think about that car accident, if you really let yourself go into that, your heart might start racing. You might get a little nauseated or sweaty a little bit. So you open that up, you have about 4 to 6 hours for what the psychologists call memory reconsolidation. And you literally say, once you neutralize that adrenalized response, which is one of Shell's terms, Jimmy, which I think is perfect description of it, how would you like that to have turned out? Like I have one person who had this horrible thing happen at Christmas, and his brother played tricks on him, and what it got down to was his father was so angry with him at the way it turned out. He came into his bedroom. Kid's 5 years old and crying, and said, "Are you okay?" "No, I ruined Christmas." And Dad picks him up and tosses him across the room. I mean, the brutality, I cannot tell you. It's more common than I ever really realized. How would you like that to have ended? We tapped all that down. You know, he's crying now at 48. I would like him to have picked me up and hugged me, right? And told me that I know it was a terrible trick that was played on you. You didn't ruin Christmas. And just told me it was okay. And that's what we did. And there's a process you go through where you bring it in, you bring it down, you ground it, and then bring it to your heart. And the current thinking is our memories and experiences are around us, since we are electromagnetic beings. There's nowhere that they've studied you keep a memory in your body. Now, they can get stuck and they can cause problems, but they're out here. And so we take that, this is the way this ended, and we put it into that individual's morphic field. And that's the new way it goes. Do you know how it ended at the beginning? Of course you do. But that's not the memory that comes up and the emotions that are spurred when it comes up. And you never know where Matrix is going to go. It's nothing short sometimes of miraculous. You don't know who's going to come in, who was involved, that they forgot was involved. So, yeah, it's having all those different tools at your disposal, I think, makes a world of difference.
It sounds fascinating. And I've kind of said this before, is like we do have the ability to write our own story and to edit it and to go back and our brains, we're controlling it. And so by putting the positive into it, it's just about changing the words sometimes, isn't it, as well, and the state. And we don't realize it. I mean, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's doable, isn't it? Obviously,
it is.
Everybody can do it.
If you can, the key is neutralizing that automatic response. Because if you think about PTSD, I don't know how much you've studied it. I've been studying it quite a lot. The difference, like, let's say it's a soldier who's traumatized by battlefield experiences and the loud firing of a weapon, let's say. So you and I are at the corner in our car and the window's down and we hear a backfire, right? We're going to go, geez, who was that? You're looking for the car that's got the smoke coming out of it, or maybe somebody dropped a dumpster, right? We're going to go through a process before we say, that could have been a gunshot, right next to me. The soldier with PTSD is going to go from sound to, I'm on it, I'm hitting the dirt, I'm protecting everyone around me in less than, a second, maybe? And it literally rewires the brain. And all of these things physically rewire your brain. Well, if you can wire it that way in the first place, depending on the person and the tools that you use, you can typically rewire it for them or with them, right? I look at them as a coach. I'm not doing the work. They're doing the work. I'm guiding them through it.
Yeah. Like you say, it's rewiring. What I was going to go on to, sorry, I've had a list of things here I wanted to ask you, and it's trying to get it in the right order. So I used to think that, these things, you have to be susceptible, a bit like hypnotherapy. You have to be open to
sensitive.
These. I don't know if sensitive is the word. I think you can block out, or if you're not open to some of these therapies, it's maybe not going to work. How does that work with what you do? these will work if you put the time into it.
Yeah.
Or do you have to be open to it? This is what
you have to be open, and it's not even a matter so much of belief as there's a thing like hidden benefits, right? So that, let's say somebody has really bad fibromyalgia, right? And people with fibromyalgia, they hurt pretty much all the time. And there's different kinds, and we've mapped some things back to, too much pressure being put on somebody while they were growing up. They can't take the pressure of a lot of things pushing on their body. There's a lot of, the brain's kind of literal in many senses, but maybe they're getting some hidden benefits, like they don't have to do certain things they didn't want to do. Oh, it's, the family birthday party, I'm not feeling up to it. Are they being, consciously saying, I'm going to use this against this? No, probably not. But if they're getting enough benefit out of something that otherwise is uncomfortable or feels detrimental, they may not want to change. And you can do anything. They can go through the steps or whatever. So there has to be almost a willingness. And there can even be resistance. Like, I don't believe this. I don't want to do this. They're like, okay, don't. Or maybe I'm not the person. That's okay too. You need to find the right fit. But if you're just simply resistant and you want to see if you can try it, we try it on something that's not big and hairy. And we might even tap away the resistance first and see if, there's an exercise we do called constrained breathing. So we'll have everybody breathe in as deeply as they can and let it out, and then rate 0 to 10. How well do you think that breath worked? And someone will say 6 or whatever the number is. And so then we'll do some tapping, and we'll just talk about my constrained breathing, and we'll do it just a couple rounds. And there's this, and I'll show you, when we're ready for that, it's just a certain pattern that we go through as a condensed basic recipe. And then we'll have them do it again. And invariably, the majority of people in the class will go up 1 or 2 points, that they will be able to breathe better. Sometimes they go way up, and they're like, how did that happen? That's weird. So there's a way to test that without getting people all emotionally involved and, get them off their position. Like, breathing. Can you try breathing?
That's an easy one. What do you think, Jimmy? Is this something you would try?
Maybe. I used to have a hard time talking about my encounter, and what I had learned about my encounter. I mean, there was times where I would either get close to tear up. I would go back to that moment as a kid when I was 5 feet away from one, and the emotions came out. Child emotions came out, not adult emotions, if that makes any sense. And it was very hard to deal with. But what I have found for me is the more I talk about it, the easier it is to deal with it. And, now going out and looking for these things, my train of thought is I want to see one as an adult. So now I can have this adult encounter. As a child, I was terrified. I did not want to see it. So I turned away as fast as I could. I didn't want to look at it. There's a monster 5 feet from me. I do not want to be here. I want to be somewhere else. So those are the fear, and it's a primal fear. It is physical. It's not just up in your head. My body starts trembling. My guts feel like they're vibrating. My voice cuts out. As an adult, I wanted to have an encounter. I want to go out. That's why I go out. I go out to have an encounter so I can basically, kind of face my demon, but have the opportunity to observe one looking at it. Who knows how it turns out, So if this actually works and I have another encounter as an adult and I don't leave running away wet in my pants, it shouldn't be, in my mind, it should be easier to deal with my childhood encounter, because now as an adult, I've got to see what I needed to see and just push those feelings back, because now what I've recently seen is brand new. It's not old memories and old fears. I have now got something brand new. It could be, who knows? It could be trauma, or it could be just, you know, what I need to just move on. You know, if that makes any sense. I mean, I've been in car accidents where I shouldn't have walked away, a couple of them. And I can talk about those 24 hours a day, and I don't get fazed by it at all. In fact, that's kind of boring to me. But as soon as I start talking about my encounter, my whole demeanor changed. My whole entire body is affected by it. So for me, going out and actually, you know, when we did the 168, I was tasked to go in. If there's one behind a bush or a tree, I'm the hunting dog. I go in and flush it out so it can get caught running. And I had to do this in the dark, face my fears. And I was doing that. And I was eager to do it, if that makes any sense. I was overly eager to do it. Carrie had to rein me back in a couple of times. I'm like, release the Kraken, man. Just let me go. And he's like, just wait. Well, just wait. Just hold on. Wait, you know, kind of thing. But it's, for me, it's facing it with the mindset of, I've been scared of this too long. Now it's time for it to get real, basically.
Mm. You were the good bunch of guys, though, to do that with.
Yeah.
You know, like with a safety net almost around you as well.
Strength in numbers. There was being out there, it is a sense of security. It may be a false sense of security, but it is a sense of security. That is for sure. Going out alone, I went out alone. I was terrified out of my mind, but while I was out there, I had to do what I had to do to get to the next step. And I finally went in when I saw that eye shine. I went towards it, you know, and it was like one of those things when I first seen it, it really freaked me out. But then it was, you're out here for a reason. Go figure it out. And I did. And turned out it was just a curious deer, you know, thankfully. But, you know, whatever. I mean, you know, that's why I do what I do, and why some of us do what we do. Some of us want to have that encounter. Some of us want to learn more about them. Some of us want to see what evidence we can put together or whatnot. It's all one big puzzle. It's not really filling in that fast. We're grasping at pieces that look like they fit, but they don't fit. But we're trying to make them fit. It's kind of the subject.
Mm. I just wonder, you know, if you've already had some sort of trauma in your life and then you experience a Bigfoot or alien or whatever, can that heighten that experience, the PTSD? Can you have multiple PTSD, and does that create then more complications?
It can, depending on how many similarities there are, right? So you brought up a couple things, Jimmy, that really, thank you for the softballs, because they're just perfect examples, right? So our body, I used to think, and I was into this for a while before I really got this, I used to think that we had emotions and then our body reacted in a certain way to the emotion. So I am in utter fear, right? And my fear, and most people's fear, goes right to the solar plexus, into the third chakra area, if you speak chakras. Well, it turns out that your body's systems, you know, they're always scanning for a threat, always. And that's why the amygdala is always so quick to go, that looks like something that could have killed us before. We're going to heighten your senses and get you the heck out of here.
Yeah.
The body sees and detects and feels it. And depending on what you feel in your body and what your body is basically coded for throughout your life, that tells you that you're afraid. So it's number one, it was backwards from what I assumed. So when we have emotions, there is something in our body that's informing our logical system what's happening. So if you had let's go back to Daniela's question here. So with your first experience as a kid, do you remember any eye shine at that time?
Nope. It was actually during the day.
Okay, so being out at night and seeing eye shine intellectually or logically, you would probably go, ooh, that's possibly what I'm looking for, but you don't know, but enough to be apprehensive and proceed with caution. But because that wasn't part of your initial experience, it's not going to be the same kind of PTSD trigger for you. However, if you came across whatever it was, daytime, the right position, the sun was in the right place in the sky, the bend of the river looked the same as where you first saw it, all of those things, if any of those things converged at the same time, you're more likely to trigger off of that. And sometimes they're so, you're not even consciously aware of them, but our subconscious records everything. And so people will come to me and they'll say, I'm getting these triggers off of X, Y, and Z, and I don't even know why. I didn't have any experiences like that. And so teasing that out is part of the job at that point. So now back to your point, Daniela, about multiple. So there was a story about Gary Craig, who is he's the Stanford engineer that was the student of I can't think of the guy's name that created EFT. Please forgive me. He created thought field therapy. He did this to help his clients or patients. He came through and said, we're going to create, instead of analyzing for 6 months, you have this issue, that's this point. You have this issue, we're going to tap that point. He said, let's just do all the points all at once. And he took that into the VA and worked with a soldier who was going to live at the VA for the rest of his life. And he must have had, I don't remember what the story was, 250 or 300 events that were all similar enough. He was hurt, there were munitions being fired or grenades or whatever's going on. He's watching his buddies get blown up. There's so many that overlapped that they just kept getting deeper, and more raveled up. Now, in our brains, the similar things get wrapped onto the same neural network. And that's part of why we trigger, right? Because all those things are there. It's like this little catalog and your brain goes through them in, the flash of an instant. Gary went through 7 or 8 events with this vet. And the day that he was there, the vet went through another 25, I guess, on his own. And because usually your body serves up the things you're ready to work on at the time. So I always tell people, trust whatever's coming up, even if it seems scary. We'll just take it a little slice at a time so you don't get overwhelmed. In doing those 30 odd events that were the core part of his PTSD, excuse me, the rest of the neural network collapsed on its own. You don't have to do all 300 of them because enough of them are overlapping, like you're talking about, that through disuse, because that's how a neural network stays strong, like practicing an instrument or doing computer programming or anything you have to practice to stay sharp at, when you're not using it, it becomes less and less acute. So yeah, they do build on each other if there are similarities. Is that?
Yeah.
I can go so far afield, so you just have to kind of go, hey, get back here.
That was perfect. Yeah, that was great. That's what I was thinking about. Let's talk about Kerry, because he's given me permission as well to talk about he did some work with you. How did you find Kerry and his experience and what he was going through? Was he easy to help, or did it take some time?
He was super easy because he was, number one, you know Kerry. Kerry's very honest. He doesn't shirk away from something or hold something back because it seems like it might be too tough to approach. When I wrote to Brent after hearing Kerry on the show, and I could hear in his voice what he was going through, and so I said, do you think he'd be open to this? Brent wrote to him that night, and Kerry got a hold of me the next morning. So he wanted, let's get going. So he walked me through the entire incident. And there's 2 ways that we can go about these things. One, if you want to, and if you really need to get it all out, that's fine. We can do that. The other way is we call it tell the story and start from a neutral spot and then tell me the story that led up to it. So Kerry, if I remember right, we first kind of talked about what was happening. And then what had happened, and then we backed up, and I said, bring me in from where nothing was going on. You know, I think he was cutting a lane for turkey hunting, right? So he had a good clear line of sight for shooting, and he'd been hunting on this farmer's land for years and years. And it was like, this is happy place, right? And that's the thing I think that really triggered me was he said, I don't like hunting anymore. I don't like going out in the woods. And I thought, that would be like somebody yanking my skiing away from me, and that was where I went to get away from everything, right? So we did a slice at a time, and the first part that brought up any kind of an escalation, I think, was after he realized that what he saw, the entity, person, whatever you want to call, being walking back and forth down there over the edge of the hill by the stream or river, might not have been the guy's big overweight, nephew from the city out for a day on the farm. And
yeah, he's no longer looking at a fat Scottie Pippen. Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And I think this was almost 2 years ago. So thank you for that, because now you're bringing it all back. So then what we do is, so we'll say, okay, you're there. Where do you feel it? What's going on in your body? And we catalog it. And what we do is we take a baseline. There's a thing called the subjective units of distress, or SUDS for short. 0 to 10, 10 being scrape me up the ceiling. How intense is this feeling? Where do you feel it? What does it feel like? Does it have, some people are really visual. Does it have a color, a shape, a mass, edges, whatever? Give it definition. What are the emotions? And we'll map all of that out. Then we'll tap on it, and I'll have him, now he's told me the story, so I'll start tapping, and all of a sudden I realized, and as I'll say a phrase, he would repeat a phrase, and we get through that emotional crescendo, and we bring everything back down. And so I can see, which is why video is often the best instead of just phone. You can do it on the phone, but video is way better. That he had leveled down. And so what do you feel now? Well, there are times when it's not in the solar plexus anymore, and now my chest feels tight and it's hard to breathe, because now what happens when you get scared? You tighten up, you can't expand, and that's how panic attacks often will start to tell you that they're there. And if he's down to what he says, it's all gone, back up like you're rewinding a tape, start over, and tell me just up until you start feeling something happen. Often when you've relieved the first parts of it, more details will come out that you haven't thought about in 10 years, because they've been overshadowed by this big piece of it. And we will stutter step then our way through an event. And so he was on it. I mean, he had rehearsed this so many times in his head. Why can't I get over this? Why did this bother me so much? Obviously he feared for his safety. And what was it? There's that one guy, those two researchers out of Alabama, you always park and get up and go position, which is why my husband always taught me. He said, wherever you do, you back in. He said, you may have to leave in a hurry. And when he was talking about getting back to his four-wheeler, glad that he didn't have to get through the thing. All of those things are going through your head. And I bet the whole space of the time wasn't but a couple minutes. And most traumatic events really are only a couple of minutes when you get to the key. So he was motivated. He wanted to do it. He was missing a big part of his life. And I think he was kind of at that point where it's like, well, what have I got to lose by trying this? Brutally honest, and a little harder on himself sometimes than but that's a guy thing, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I definitely noticed his, because breathing's really important, isn't it?
It's pretty much, if that's not happening,
it's overrated. It's
overrated. Yeah. But I could tell, when he would tell his account, I see a difference in it now. But he's stopped breathing basically, and you can see him getting, I could notice it.
Right.
And now he's a bit more relaxed. Although still, I think there's moments, isn't there? I think there's, and this is, once you're in this subject, there's so much of it around you as well that it's constant. It must be. So there's not a day probably where you're not thinking about it just because of where you're at by default.
It's changed your whole life.
Yeah. And the sad thing is, to think that he did spend so many years in the woods hunting, doing what he loved and being out in nature and everything, to not want to do that again. That would kill me. Even I don't hunt or anything, but I love to go out in the woods, and to think something would scare me enough to stop me doing that. But yet we do have encounters in our lives, normal day-to-day things that stop us doing things in our lives, from meeting people to going out to, so it's amazing, isn't it, how these things can just transform your life, not in a good way. And I hope people recognize that there is a reason why we react the way we do, and there is a hope, and a chance to change how you live in your life if you're living with any sort of stress or trauma, because it's not a way to live, is it? It's sad.
You're trapped. You're really kind of a prisoner. Way back in the 70s, there was a guy named Werner Erhard, and he kind of cobbled together from all the major religions and philosophies and whatnot, this training. And what they did, it was called the S training. And I think I took it in LA in like 81. And they spend the first weekend kind of tearing you down, right? You, like, get off of yourself and stop with all your self-important this and that. And then there's a Wednesday night seminar. And then the next weekend, they build you back up. And one of the things they talk about is, all right, so you've had a bad relationship. I'm not ever going to get that close to anyone again because it broke your heart, right? Or you had like the car accident, and now I no longer drive on freeways. I had to help a lady who lived up on the East Coast, and everywhere she went, she had to go over a waterway. And she said, I can't do half of my business because I freak out going up over these bridges over the water. So what they said in the class is that if you live long enough and you don't do anything about this, pretty soon all you're left with is eating and going to the bathroom. And let's hope nothing bad happens around either one of those. And I thought about that. I thought, well, that was facetious, but my God, they're right. We want to protect ourselves. So I'm not going to put myself in that position again. But then what you're saying happens, Daniela, that you're not living anymore.
Yeah, definitely. And you also, we were talking before about the shame and isolation people feel by not coming forward. It is a real shame, because you need, I know, Strangeland, you're right, you do need your friends and family when you're going through a traumatic, but you also need to reprogram how you're thinking is the only way to really deal with things, isn't it? Talking's great and listening, but this seems like really important to. What is there certain places you're tapping on? Is there a reason why you're tapping them areas?
So my good friend Chris at Ensemble Creative has done my marketing and stuff forever. She made me this for the inside of my business card, right? So you got my little business card and how to get Barb, but this is also a little graphic I give my clients, and they can put it on their phone as their wallpaper or whatever, because when you're ticked off or scared, the last thing you're thinking of, me included, is tapping, right? So I get it. So it's a little reminder. So what there are in the basic recipe, we use points that are either near the very beginning or the end of certain meridians. And I think there's 9 points. I keep going back and forth because we do all these things. But all right, so the first point, depending on who you're trained with, it doesn't matter. It's also a very forgiving process. If you skip one, it's still going to work. That's what's so cool about this. People can break down and start crying, and we just pick up and keep going, and it's fine. So I start right on the orbital socket. We call it the inner eye, and it's between the beginning of your eyebrow and the top of your nose. So that's one tapping point. I don't remember what meridian that is, but these are all off of different meridians. Then the outer eye is on that bone going into the temple a little bit, and that's gallbladder, which, by the way, if you're having trouble sleeping and you wake up at night, don't tap it. It'll keep you awake. But massage that point, and a lot of times that will kind of get you back in to being able to where you can go back to sleep. Then under the eye, if you're looking straight ahead, it's on this bone. Technically, it's in that lower eyelid, but that's really uncomfortable. And these are so close to the surface that just tapping that will get you close enough. So as you're going straight ahead, this is the stomach 2 right here. And stomach is typically the one tied to fear, anxiety, overwhelm. So if you're working on something and there's a lot of fear involved, it's okay to linger, right, on these points. Usually you're tapping 8 to 12 times on a point. You get kind of a rhythm going. When we do tell the story, I'll say, I was walking through the woods, and they'll repeat. And the last thing I expected to see, and they'll repeat. So you kind of get a little rhythm. Yeah. The next one is between the tip of your nose and your upper lip. And this, if you feel the bump from your teeth to your gum, that's where it is. You don't have to tap it that hard. Just that's a positioning. And that's the governing meridian. And then the next one is that crease in your chin, so tip of the chin to the lip. That's the conception vessel meridian. So we tap there. Now this one we call the collarbone only because it takes way too long to call it anything else. So find the hollow of your throat where there's almost a little stirrup of bone. Come down an inch, and then on either side an inch. And I tap it like this. So I'm pretty much good. You don't want to be on the sternum. It's not in the center. It's right below the bumps of your collarbone, the clavicle. That's a kidney meridian. It's K27. And I learned studying some of the Donna Eden energy medicine. This one's really important because as you're moving and clearing energy and clearing blockages, this keeps things going in the right direction. There's a certain way that energy is supposed to move through your body. So that's K27. Then there's a spleen point. You go like where your armpit is, but go down a hand width. Basically on a woman's where the bra band would go across. If you feel around in the center, you'll feel a tender spot, maybe the size of a quarter. Again, we're not trying to make it hurt. That's just where it is. And the spleen flushes things out of the body, right? It processes things through and gets them out. And then the last one, if you come up from your ears to the top of your head, there are several meridians that cross there. I've heard one Chinese term for it, the meeting of many rivers. And so what we do as we're telling the story is we follow this pattern. I'll watch somebody's body language, if they start out like this, right? And by the time we're done and their face is relaxed, I'll ask them and we'll reassess where we're at. It can be 2 times around. It can be 10 times around. They might uncover other things while we're talking and what daisy chain to other things. So we just go, I follow the client wherever they want to go and whatever's coming up for them. And that's the basic pattern. And then there's some other ones I can show you later that are just little, well, I'll show you one that right now it's really great. All right. So if you're in, especially if you're in public or you don't want people to see that you're kind of getting wound up, between the last 2, the pinky and the ring finger, you got the knuckle there. Mm-hmm. Come up about 1/4 to 1/2 of an inch in that trough, the bone, between the bones. And that goes to a radiant meridian called triple warmer. That's also part of the fight or flight. So I've had a guy whose wife was trying to take his kids from him and telling outrageous lies in court. And he was trying his best not to come unglued. So I gave him this one, and he got to see his kids again. They lifted, whatever part of the restraining order that it all been. It was a mess. He says, I think I have blisters, but I get to see my kids again. And you can do that under the table, when you're in that meeting and someone's across the table taking credit for your idea. That'll keep you calm. So that one, they call that the gamut point. And it's used in some other techniques, but that's the basic recipe we work off of. And if you miss one, it's bendable, it's flexible. And if you're crying, we quit talking. You just tap, and about 3 times around, the tears will pretty much stop.
It's fascinating.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Kerry says under the eye is the biggest reliever.
Absolutely right. Yeah, and that's tied to that solar plexus. That's that real fear, anxiety, terror, whatever. Yeah.
How many people are going to be tapping tonight
Yeah.
in the chat?
You should see when you drive on the freeway, when you're getting an area that the, EFT's kind of used a lot. You'll look over and you'll see somebody, but they're probably not going to rear end that guy that cut him off.
Jimmy, have you got any thoughts?
Yeah, it's a little off topic, but not maybe. So I've been catching on a lot of key things that you're saying and that you have said throughout this whole time. You had mentioned chakra and certainly things like that. Would I be wrong in thinking that you are a little sensitive to certain things, paranormal or spiritual?
Oh, you mean like more intuitive or kind of psychic or whatever? Yeah. I always have been, and I didn't know it, right? So what I tell people, your intuition is like this. If you catch yourself saying, I knew I shouldn't have done that, because you did it anyway and it didn't work out, or vice versa, you are intuitive. We don't always like the guidance that we get. So what my teacher, my mentor told me, who is incredibly intuitive, like scary kind of, and she does automatic writing and gets all this stuff down and it's completely accurate. And I was like, okay, I'm not there, but I respect it. She said, the more you do this, the more intuitive you will become. And so what's happened for me, not only does the intuition pop up, I'm dealing with more health issues are coming into this too. And so that intuition has been helping me almost move into some medical intuition and asking questions I may not have asked before. But and go all the way back from when I was a kid, the books in my bookcase from my mother, who converted to Catholicism and still had youth yoga and reincarnation in the bookcase, and she had Lovecraft stories in the bookcase, and she had Astronomy Made Simple and Linda Goodman's Sun Signs. And so I've always been interested in these things, and it's gotten stronger, and I'm learning to trust it. I always thought it was Barb's good idea, right? It's like, I don't care where it's coming from. If it helps somebody, I'll offer it up and they can take it or leave it, right?
Yeah. So have you had any personal spiritual visions or encounters or paranormal experiences that you have tapped into?
Mine have all been kind of fun, or I'm too clueless to know that they're not. I'm not quite sure what it is. Let's say when my husband and I bought our house in Lakeville, we bought a little small acreage. And when we moved in the night before doing the inspection, first there were these two white doves on the roof. Like, we're out in the middle of nowhere. There's not a church or okay, whatever. The next day we're watching down on this big swing set, with the 6x6s and the railroad ties and all this. Yeah. And there's two or three little kids, little blonde kids down there watching us move in. Now we're in the country. So I asked our neighbor the next day who those kids were. And she said, what kids? And I said, well, there were these little kids that watching us. She says, no one's got, they're 4 and 6 or something. She says, no one's got kids like that. So we were like, whoa, okay, that's interesting. We would hear footsteps across the carpet going when we would go to bed at night. And then one time the door closed, but nothing felt bad. And so I had a friend of mine who was very psychic, and she said that there was a claim. The guy had gotten the claim in the land rush. A claim jumper killed him, and the guy had lived there. He had a little cat, and he didn't realize that he was gone, and he liked our cat. So he was up. I said, but we're on the 2nd floor. And she said, it's like he knows. Well, gravity isn't really affecting him right now. I would hear music, and sometimes still I will hear music and chimes. When I'm working with someone, you can see orbs flying through my office like crazy, and I only see them because I'm watching through HD camera. I wouldn't see them if I turned around. I have clients who can. So all sorts of things like that have happened over the years. They've been positive. They didn't scare me.
Sure.
But you just kind of go, oh, I don't know what to do with that, but okay.
Right. Well, thank you for that. I was just curious because you were, like I said, you had said a couple words that kind of are attached to being sensitive and knowledgeable about this, certain subjects that have to do with paranormal and spiritual, and just I was getting that vibe, but I wanted to make sure that I wasn't reading wrong.
No, you are reading right. I'm interested in it. My clients teach me a lot. And one gentleman I work with, Sean Gonzalez, he can see, like, if you have something going on in your house, you don't know what it is, it doesn't feel right, especially in this one room, you can take photos, you can show Sean, and then Sean doesn't astrally project, he projects his consciousness, and he will go in and route out whatever's there. And I kept, getting stronger and stronger in what I'm doing and getting ideas. Ask them this. I don't know where it came from, right? So those are the things like you're talking about I'm more open to them. And he told me, he said, look, you are working with more and more gifted people, and they go through way more paranormal trauma than I would have ever expected. It's not all unicorns and lollipops if you are that gifted. It's scary.
Yeah.
He said, you're going to get stronger too. So, I think it's just part of the process, and I'm grateful for it because I can help people so much more quickly if I'm not afraid. Like, that sounds like a stupid question to ask. Just like ask it.
Yeah. Miss Daniel, I think you're muted. We can't hear you.
Yep.
There we are. Thank you. Intuition is something that we ignore such a lot. For whatever reason, and I think the more you work on yourself, the more you're tapping into that. It's pardon the pun, but you are, aren't you? And I think we can create such a lot. We're more powerful than we think we are. Our minds and what we can do with our minds and with our, like I say, intuition, whatever that is, however we can tap into it. I've just seen you. That's weird. Bob Charlton.
Who said that?
Barbara Charlton.
All right. Well, it's funny that you say that because I am studying the Power of 8, which is the power of intuition, with Lynn McTaggart, who's an investigative journalist. She wrote The Field. She's studying all of these interconnected things. A mother, how does she know that her son was hurt halfway around the world the moment he's hurt? And she uncovered the old technology that when they talk about, Jesus and the disciples sat together and prayed, they don't tell us, like, what did they pray about? Or I always thought, okay, they prayed. What do? We do in church. We all said, please give me this and thank you for that and whatever. They prayed together for something specific. They wanted to heal a specific person or a town, a leper colony. And they proved over and over again that these miracles would happen with this power of intention. So, and it's not just in that Christianity, it's in all the old, if you go back before we all built the religions into the things that we want them to be, it's there. And she has a master class she's been holding every year, and it's 6 3-hour classes, I think, over 6 weeks. And then we meet with the group once a week for a year, and then we follow up with Lynn, because she said the miracles she saw were becoming commonplace. Stage 4 liver cancer, full remission, or no evidence to where the doctors say, oh, it must not have been there in the first place, that kind of thing. But the thing that surprised her was the people doing the intending. And you 10 minutes, right? So there's we did some for my husband and other things. I could tell you some crazy things that have already happened in just 2 months. The people doing the intending are getting miracles unasked for, things they've been struggling with in their lives that you never thought would have gotten straightened out. are happening, or their health suddenly improves, finances improve. One guy was in the hospital on a ventilator the night before our very first group meeting, and we intended for him, and he was out of the hospital, off the ventilator and fine 3 days later. The doctors could not understand it. They were just like, whatever you're doing, I don't know what we did. And it happened with my husband. And he's got a laundry list of weird things that have started happening to him. So, but you have to be specific. You don't boil the ocean. You don't put a laundry list of symptoms in one intention. You laser focus. And like you're saying, Danielle, it is that intention. And we are more powerful as a small group intending for someone else. And then when they say it comes back to you threefold, I'm watching it. It's like, oh, you kind of go, this all sounds good. And I respect Lynn McTaggart immensely, but now when you're in it and actually seeing it, it's totally different.
Mm-hmm. What do you feel about, that we make ourselves ill a lot of the time?
Totally.
Our problems become a physical problem.
This is my new little Bible by a woman from Belgium named Christiane Bierland, and she has the psychosomatic origins and solutions to 1,000 diseases and other phenomena, right? And so one of a trainer that I respect immensely in a class I took recommended this in another book, but I'm drawn to this one. I'm having some gout problems. Well, let's go in here and see what it says about gout. Oh, I've got eye infection. Let's go see. Every single time I'll read where she says it comes from, even as well as I know the people, I don't think it all fits. And they go, that's exactly right. I'm like, well, we have another list of things to work on.
Was that a book or was that a box?
This
is huge.
Like Nate Young could probably frame this room with this thing.
Yeah, I think that's thick. I'll wait for the cliff notes.
It is incredible. And so I I probably sold 20 or 30 copies. I should be on commission because everyone that I bring it out for ends up buying their own copy. It is how things develop. And you can tell someone, if someone says, I have this kind of cancer. In fact, I knew a woman, I'd worked with her. She had an abortion. It tore her up. And she never forgave herself. She ended up marrying the guy. And I don't know if she ever told him that she had been pregnant. I heard that she had died of cancer now 30 years later. And I thought, I'll bet it's something to do, ovarian, uterine, whatever. And it was. And it just hit me in the gut that she was so angry and she held all that in so long. But I'm seeing it over and over. That one I knew the situation, so it was an educated guess. But yes, you're absolutely right. It can turn into stuff if we don't let it go.
Yeah. And like you said, the gut, especially, a lot of gut problems, stress, worry, just manifests, doesn't it, like that? I did actually see that question. Sorry, Jay Cappy. He's saying tapping and manifesting. Is it the same thing?
Oh, like manifesting something and the actual tapping? I don't think so. Depending on, again, we talked about how words, can be used in different situations. If you think of tapping as neutralizing, so you're neutralizing something. So I'll have someone she says, I'm sick and tired of this, and I'm sick and tired of that. And I finally noticed, I said, do you notice you're always sick and tired? So in a way, she's manifesting that. I said, the only time I want you ever to use those words, and if you catch yourself, I want you to tap while you're saying, I'm sick and tired of my sister always doing this. Then you can neutralize it. Otherwise, you're reinforcing it. So repetition, fervent belief, throwing a lot of emotion behind something will manifest something, good or bad. Who was it? Marianne Williamson said, if you knew how powerful you were, you wouldn't leave the house.
Yeah.
I'm not that mindful.
Yeah. It's a good saying. That it's definitely a good saying.
Yeah,
I do know another one, but I won't say it. But it's the same kind of thing.
You could tell us off the air.
I'll tell you. Look, we've come to the end of our hour, but we definitely have to get you back because there's so much more we can talk about. I really enjoyed
goodness, thank you so much. I can't believe it. I'm like, I've kept you over. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's not a problem at all. It's been absolutely fascinating. Jimmy, thank you for joining me tonight.
Absolutely.
You,
yeah, you bet. Thank you for having me on. And real quick, I want to say, since I can't say it tomorrow on a platform like this, happy Memorial Day to all of our past and current serving vets. Thank you for your service out there, guys, ladies.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Thanks to everyone in the chat. I'm sorry if I missed any questions, but we'll definitely get Barb back and we can go through them again. So, guys, we'll see you all on Wednesday on the Researchers Report. Thanks again, Jimmy, Barbara, everyone. Have a good night. Bye.
You too.